to our didactic for now. And we're very excited to have our very own Megan Carpenter, the PI for our grant. And Megan is going to share with you today about the positive behavior flow charts. So, welcome, Megan.
Erin, so excited to be here with you all. Um, I've left this pretty basic and pretty informal today. So if you have questions, want to interrupt as we go through the didactic, I've left time and space for that. So please pop those in chat, raise your hand as we talk about positive behavior flowcharts. So by the end of the didactic today, the goal is that you'll be able to explain the purpose of the positive behavior flowchart and then explain to others in your school how to use the positive behavior flowchart. So I know at your last in-person, we went over what is this positive behavior flowchart. We want to make sure that we're acknowledging students for doing the right thing. And it comes across sometimes a little bit prescriptive. Like if we see a student doing X behavior, we need to say why, and we need to, do this in a timely manner, and everybody needs to use the same language. But in reality, the flowchart is really about taking the behaviors that are on the matrix, the skills, the norms, and making sure that staff are acknowledging that that happens, giving staff the flexibility to acknowledge those skills in a way that makes sense for them, their environment, and their students, but also making sure that we are consistently providing that acknowledgement to encourage those behaviors we want to see more of. So with the positive behavior flowchart, it kind of gets us away from thinking only about the tokens, tickets, prize boxes that give these school-wide behavior systems a bad reputation. Because from working through this process, acknowledgement of behavior is just one piece of how we support students' behavior and how we build this framework. We do, of course, still need to acknowledge that students are engaging in appropriate behavior because we all need reinforcement to continue to do things in general. So we ourselves are not going to continue to engage in positive behaviors if they don't result in things that we want. Same for our students. So the positive behavior flowchart provides guidelines for how we respond to appropriate behaviors. It's not a step-by-step for specific behaviors. Because reinforcement increases the likelihood of behavior being repeated. And our goal with any type of behavior support system is that we see more positive behaviors, more contextually appropriate behaviors, and less contextually inappropriate behaviors. So when we think about reinforcement, just when student engages in the skill we want, aligned to our school-wide norm, they'll receive some type of reinforcement. So that reinforcement, we'll go through lots of options of what that can look like today. Could be a thumbs up, could be a note on the top of their paper, could be a note written on the back of their paper, folded up in the tiny corner for our high school students that don't dare want others to know that they are being acknowledged for doing the right thing, but we all know they still want to be acknowledged as long as their peers don't know about it. It could be sticky notes. It could be a token system for your school if that's what works for your school, but it doesn't have to be. So there's lots of options, but we just want to provide some type of acknowledgement, and that acknowledgement, it might only be a behavior specific praise statement, and I know that's in one of your practice guides, but even if it's not a behavior specific praise statement, it needs to be paired with some type of behavior specific praise statement so students know exactly what they're doing and that you acknowledge the specific behavior that you want to see again and again. So when we think about reinforcement, I think about some of my own behaviors. Like, why do I do these things? And sometimes that helps us as educators realize that it can be really frustrating because we do feel and right, it makes sense at a certain point, like they should really know how to do this. And maybe they should, but if they aren't, they don't, and they're not getting the reinforcement to continue the appropriate behavior. So I think about my own behavior. So I cook dinner because I'm reinforced with an edible dinner, usually. I pick up my son from school. I will try to rearrange my meetings at least once or twice a month so I can pick up my son from school because I get the biggest hug ever when he sees me. And I find that really reinforcing. So I engage in these behaviors because I get something I like in return. If I if I tried to cook dinner and I burnt it every day, which does not happen, I don't burn the food usually. I'd probably stop cooking because I am not getting any type of positive reinforcement. It's work, it's a mess, and I'm not getting dinner. Um, if I want rearrange my schedule and then found that somebody else, like another caregiver, picked up my son from school and I didn't get to see him after school, I wouldn't rearrange my schedule to pick him up if he's not going to be there, if I'm not going to get that hug, right? If I'm not going to get to spend some time with him. So when you think about the behaviors that you display and why you continue to display them, go ahead and list that in the chat, or you can unmute and share. What behaviors do you continue to display because of the reinforcement you get? Love that, Maya. Going to bed early so I'm not tired. Reinforcement of just being refreshed and ready to go in the morning. So Chandler researching current evidence-based practices. Yay. You host that life group because people keep showing up, exercising so you feel better. Lots of exercising so you feel better. Being kind to your husband, eating better so you sleep better. Letting kids cook so they're more likely to try the food. Getting to school earlier so you can be prepared without interruptions, right? So we do these behaviors for a reason because we get something positive out of them. Respond to emails so my message trolls don't incite your anxiety. Absolutely. Picking up grandson, so one-on-one time with him. Absolutely. So we engage in these behaviors because we get something we want. Our students do the same thing. And so we want them to get something they want when they do an appropriate or contextually appropriate behavior, not when they display those contextually inappropriate behaviors. So if you think about kind of the opposite, imagine a time when you did something and no one acknowledged it. Did you keep doing it? So for me, I remember I was early in my career in post-secondary higher education, and I was like the newest, right out of my doc program, brand new faculty, and everybody else had 30 years of experience. And they were developing a new course on behavior, and I was the only one with any behavior experience. And I continually got ignored. And I was like, hey, do you want help? Do you want help? I continually got ignored. So it took me a long time before I ever offered to help with course development again because right, I wasn't nobody acknowledged it. I wasn't reinforced. There was nothing that happened. In my case, it was then a really messy course that I had to teach students after they received that course, and the information wasn't that great. So I really wasn't very positive for experience for me. So think about you. What are some behaviors you have stopped doing because you don't get any acknowledgement, any reinforcement for doing those behaviors? Stop texting someone because they never respond. Chrissy, I'm with you. I tried to stop picking up things when nobody noticed, but then it bothered me so much I had to start again. Eat vegetables for the toddler. Warren, great. I really like that one, Warren. So stopped being in a rush. So because others were feeling you didn't have time for them. Stop coordinating family trips because everyone complained, right? There's behaviors that we're not going to do anymore because what happened afterwards wasn't good. It didn't feel good. Um, Sharing feelings when bothered, stop calling others who appear to be too busy to return a call, right? There's just things that have happened and we stop engaging in those behaviors because when we do, even if our behavior might have been contextually appropriate, no one acknowledged that. We didn't receive any reinforcement uh, that made us want to continue that behavior. Next slide, Karen. Thanks. So our students aren't any different. If we don't acknowledge what they're doing well, some of them will not keep doing it. And it takes less effort to acknowledge appropriate behaviors than constantly correct inappropriate behaviors. So I remember my first early my teaching career, I had this student, Jamal. Jamal was supposed to be a sixth grader, but decided not to do any work in fifth grade, and he failed fifth grade. So he was repeating fifth grade. And I taught middle school and was in a K-8 building or pre-K-8 building. And Jamal was moving into the middle school classroom because behavior scared the elementary kids in the special ed classroom. And Jamal had never in a long time been told he had done anything positive. Jamal scared teachers. He threw desks. He made faces at other kids. He ran up and down hallways. He screamed. He had a lot of behaviors. He threatened people. He had a lot of behaviors and a really intensive, ineffective behavior support plan that really didn't consider what he needed. The educators kind of gave up on him. And I was brand new and excited. So I decided, Jamal, I'm going to put some effort into Jamal. And the teachers that continued to acknowledge all of his inappropriate behaviors, kick him out of class, he continued to act up. So, for example, my classroom was across from the library. Every week he got kicked out of the library class because he did something, usually steal the book that she wanted to read aloud that day. He insisted that had to be the book just to kind of get her going, was the read aloud book. So I decided to start acknowledging appropriate behaviors. And at first, Jamal was confused and kind of upset about it. He's like, nobody tells me I do good. Why you tell me I do good? I haven't done anything good. And then he started asking to come to my classroom. He was only supposed to be in my resource classroom for 30 minutes a day. Jamal and I ended up spending a lot of time together because he would do things in my classroom. He liked being in my classroom. He was kind. He was appropriate. He was helpful. He asked to do additional work in my classroom. And in his gen ed classroom, where those appropriate behaviors were never acknowledged, the teachers talked about how terrible his behaviors were. He still threw desks. He still yelled at other kids. He yelled at everybody, his teachers. But in an environment where his appropriate behaviors were acknowledged, he engaged in work, found out he actually read 3 years above grade level and was only failing because he didn't have encouragement to do work. So I always kind of think back to Jamal and the kid that was supposedly the worst kid ever. He had been labeled a sociopath at 12. And with a little support, Jamal ended up passing fifth grade and he moved on to middle school and he went January through, we had quite the year, so through July without being suspended, which was the first time in a while, because he had a little bit of support and positive feedback. So I can always think back to Jamal when I'm thinking about why we put the effort into acknowledging behavior. And for Jamal, it took a lot of effort to find something positive at first. When he walked into my classroom and threw a chair as he walked in, right? That's a lot of effort, but it really paid off for both me as a teacher because I'm not dodging chairs anymore. This is great. And also for Jamal because he's passing fifth grade. So when we pull this back to our positive behavior flow chart, the first thing we want to do is observe and define contextually appropriate behavior. This is nothing new. You've already done this in your school-wide and class-wide matrices. So when you look at your matrix, you're just pulling out those skills you want to see and what norms they're aligned to. So if you have students completing their work on time under responsible, right? That's something we can add to our flow chart. You identify And at first, it helps to identify maybe 3 or so target behaviors within those norms that you want to really have your staff focus on. Of course, we want to be using, for all of our contextually appropriate behaviors, we want to be providing that feedback that to students, this is what you're doing well, but it really can help when you're starting this just to pick a few behaviors that are going to be the targets. Maybe one of those behaviors is something your students really do well already. And another one of those behaviors is one that maybe it's a bit of a struggle for your students, and you're hoping that with a little more feedback when they do well, you can see more of that behavior. So when you're sharing with your staff, like this isn't new. You're going back to the school class matrices and looking at these target appropriate behaviors. This is a place that maybe different grade levels are targeting different behaviors. Maybe teachers are targeting different behaviors, but they're all behaviors that are aligned to your norms. They're all to your matrices. Maybe as a school, you decide these are the 2 skills that we're going to focus on, or this is the one norm we're going to focus on. And you have to figure out what works for your setting. So when we talk about staff responding, it's not a specific behavior that we're looking for in most cases. Maybe it is a specific skill that you want to focus on, but generally, we just want to have a general response. This needs to be quick. Teachers can decide what this looks like for them. Maybe we'll get to some more examples here. So a lot of my work is in students with the most significant disabilities. So often when we say, hey, you're going to use behavior specific praise, my special ed teachers teaching kids with significant intellectual disability kind of laugh like that's not going to be enough here, right? So we can pair that with a token board. We can pair that with a sticker of a favorite character. So if your goal is, staff are going to be responding just using behavior specific praise, but then teachers have the flexibility to add in a point system for the class. Our classes for students with significant disabilities, maybe they do have a sticker chart or a token board attached to their desk that's individualized, but is still paired and aligned with that norm that you're focusing on. It's still paired with that behavior specific praise and acknowledgement when they see those appropriate behaviors. So when you think about what this could look like in your schools, what are some ways your teachers already acknowledge students' appropriate behavior? Specific praise, great. Verbal feedback, dojo point system, positive referrals, verbal praise, nonverbal acknowledgement, positive calls home, eagle bucks, thumbs up, Brown Clark points, handshakes, house call for the individual, positive referrals, positive postcards, eagle bucks, treats, calls home, dojo points, notes. So high fives, positive homes. So you're already doing these things, and it doesn't have to be new. It's really about making sure that everyone in your building, sometimes when we implement some of these things like positive note home, or we've really focused on verbal praise, then we know the teachers who are like doing it all the time, and we know there's a few that is just not fitting within the flow of what they're doing. Maybe they have other priorities in the classroom. Maybe it's just a big shift from what they've been doing before. The positive behavior flowchart, the point is that we get all of our staff responding in a similar manner. It doesn't, everybody has to be doing JoJo points. Everybody doesn't have to be doing verbal praise. Well, we should all be doing verbal praise paired with something else. But we don't have to be doing all dojo points. We don't all have to be doing a treat. We don't all have to be doing the same thing, but we do have to all be responding appropriately within what we have defined as appropriate. So maybe it is that as a staff, we use verbal behavior specific praise statements. However, if you want to pair that with your class dojo points, your positive notes home, your class prize box, your treats, whatever you want to pair that with in your classroom, that's great. But we're all going to acknowledge student appropriate behavior at a rate that we know by research and in practicality works for teachers, but is also really responsive, we want to be acknowledging 4 times as much as we're correcting. There's nothing new that we're doing with responding. We're just taking what teachers already do and formalizing it and making it consistent across everybody. So you've already listed a whole bunch of things that teachers are already doing in your schools, and you can build off of that. But we want to make sure when teachers respond in the moment that it's a guide where we are saying, hey, a lot of times you have students who verbal praise feels like the worst thing ever. I remember teaching middle school. Some of the students, it was like painful that I would acknowledge them. So I started switching to sticky notes. Sometimes I had them pre-written and I would stick them on the back of their assignments or in like a book I handed out. So they were still getting all of that. It was still praise statements. However, then I wasn't calling them out in front of their peers, which we know they don't love. In elementary school, I also taught kindergarten. So like we had sometimes full on dances that went with like the verbal praise and excitement and jumping up and down because it's really exciting when you learn a letter. It's really exciting when you sit in your seat for the first time for all of math class. And so we made big deals out of it. The idea of acknowledgement is the same. The idea of that we're providing behavior specific praise is the same. But a big dance party for a kindergartner who sat in their seat versus a quick sticky note in the back of assignment that says, thanks for sitting. Thanks for being in class today, to a high school student, it looks different. But either way, it's cost effective, quick, efficient, and easy. Because if it's not those 4 things, we all know we can't actually do that in a school setting, or teachers can't actually do that unless it is quick, low cost, efficient, and easy. So what this can look like across ages, we have that behavior specific verbal praise in elementary. Like I said, silly dances, songs, sayings, handshakes, all kinds of fun little silly things. And especially in early elementary, we might be pairing that behavior specific praise with stickers or tokens or tickets, depending on our specific students' needs, if that's something we notice that our student population needs. In secondary, we can still have some of the same concept, but it looks different. So behavior specific praise statements might be more subtle. It might be as a student walks by you as they're leaving class, walks by you as they're, walking into class. It might be as you're kind of circulating, checking on independent work, you can kind of write a quick note or whisper something quickly to that student. It might just be eye contact, head nods, and smiles. So the student acknowledges, and then you can pair that later with, a specific note that says, hey, I appreciate the way you did this. It could be, I've seen in secondary settings, some like digital point systems. There are formalized companies that can package a whole digital point system that only the student and the teacher actually see how many points they have, which can be a nice subtle way where we don't, aren't calling out kids. They don't see everybody else's points. And then, as I've already mentioned, those notes written at the top of assignments, in the back of a book, stuck on their keyboard of their Chromebook, whatever kind of works for that teacher in that moment. But the idea is that we are collectively, as a school, deciding we are going to be consistent in the way we acknowledge positive behaviors. And so that's typically around behavior specific praise statements. And then we pair that with whatever looks good and works and feels good in our classrooms for our teachers, for our students. So it's all about giving choice of how you deliver behavior specific praise, not if you're going to deliver it, because we want to set clear expectations that the rate of responding to appropriate versus inappropriate behavior needs to be about 4-to-1. And then we want to make sure there's a system for tracking. So some of these systems track themselves. Like if there's a point system, you can see how many points students are getting and to see if teachers are actually acknowledging and providing those points. But sometimes it's a little harder to track things like behavior specific praise. I've got some. So when we talk about, there's student systems that already track our teacher behavior, points, tickets, tokens, those types of things, positive office referrals versus negative office referrals. And then there's teacher specific systems. So that can be self-monitoring, that can be walkthroughs, and that can be, a peer observation. In the feedback acknowledgement practice guide, there are some of those walk through observation and self-monitoring tools that can help teachers self-monitor and peers also observe to make sure we're doing what we want to do to encourage those appropriate behaviors for students. So these aren't great, but you have to see here, but you have a copy in your didactic slides. So we think about this as more of, this one really could be used across grade levels. So for this school, this month they were going to focus on responsibility. And for them, that was completing work, helping another student, and sitting and being ready for instruction. So they were focusing specifically on behavior-specific praise statements, but they were talking about written, verbal, or verbal paired with visual support for their students with more significant disabilities, particularly, and their young pre-K learners. So they knew as behavior-specific praise statements, but they had these three options of how those could be delivered. And then in terms of communicating consistency, they were pretty much relying on self-monitoring, but specifically during the language arts block. So they weren't asking teachers to self-monitor their use of acknowledgement all day, but they chose their language arts blocks. And then they were also tracking positive versus negative office referrals. In our next example, this is more of a high school example, but it might work in some elementary or upper elementary as well. Again, it was the same, the same norm, the same skills, responsibility, completing work, helping another student, and sitting and being ready for instruction. They also chose those behavior specific praise statements, but they paired them with a digital tally point system, except they had a special education classrooms of students with complex disabilities. So they, instead of having a digital point system, which was not as accessible to them, each student had a tally sheet on their desk. So monthly, they would check on points earned by each student to see who they might have been missing as a team. And then the teachers reviewed those points earned by each student, at least weekly, so they could self-monitor and adjust and make sure that they're providing that positive feedback to students. So in conclusion, there's really nothing new about these positive behavior flowcharts. It's really just systematizing what your teachers already do really well in your buildings and making sure that everybody's on the same page with how we provide that appropriate feedback for contextually appropriate behaviors, because you're aligning reinforcement strategies to the school's identified norms and skills, and you're taking the reinforcement that those teachers already do and formalizing the systems. Just make sure it's consistent and more frequently across all staff. Because student behavior will respond to reinforcement. So it doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect phrasing every time you provide that behavior specific praise statement, but you do need to be consistent, and you have to have a system to make sure that it is happening consistently. So kind of in wrap up here, what are your next steps to make the positive behavior flowchart work for you, your staff, and your students? Input. Get on the same page. Message that this is already what you do really well. Absolutely. Look for more opportunities to reinforce that positive behavior. Great. Thank you so much. I know I already went a couple minutes over, Karen, so I'm going to turn it back to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Megan, for reviewing that information and giving us a lot of great illustrations and ways to think about the positive feedback that we are giving and getting. Any particular questions before we move on to our showcase? Looks like people have some ideas of things that they're going to go back and do. So that's great. I think some really good tips and ideas to get us thinking about those. So if you do have questions, although we'll go ahead and move forward, if you have questions, go ahead and pop those in the chat and we'll address those as they come in. But we like to thank Megan for being here and sharing with us. Thank you so much. And there's her contact information if you come up with questions later that you want. And now we're going to move